welcome to Hi, welcome to Loops and Lore, and for today's episode we are going to be reviewing Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. While I review this, I will have in the bottom of this corner here me making my granny square for this book. So before we go into the review, I wanted to go through just the materials and that kind of thing that I'm using to make my granny squares. First up, I'm using Red Heart acrylic yarn. It's just super accessible and easy to work with. I do think that some people have texture issues with it. Thankfully, I do not. But that's just a lot of what I use, so that way it's not super expensive of a hobby to get into, because the bundles of yarn are like $3 and that kind of thing. So when I do make some projects that are a little bit higher end or smaller and that kind of thing, I will use other types of yarn. But for some of these, like, you know, bigger projects and that kind of thing, I typically just use Red Heart, so that way it's not super expensive to make the different projects. I have 4 colors of yarn that I'll be using to do this with. The first is Persimmon, which is like this coral kind of color. And then I also have Golden for the yellow that is within her hair, and of course the iconic number 2 pencil. And then I have a color called Pool, which is like this really bright blue color, and then Red Hot to kind of match her lips. I will say that the US cover of this book is not my favorite. I prefer the UK covers, but I just didn't have access to that right now. So this is the cover I have, and it'll be the cover that my granny square goes on with. I'm also using a 5mm hook, because this is the one that I used on it. So that way you can see and know what size hook I was using. For this, I will be just doing a standard granny square design for this one. I will tell you a little bit why later, so that way you know. But I just decided to do that kind of standard layout. So now let's get into the book. This book is about Elizabeth Zott, who is a chemist in the 1960s and like 50s, 60s, 70s kind of time period. It does follow a stretch of time around then, and it's about her facing sexism within her field and her life. And after some unexpected turns of events, she does become a host of a television series where she cooks and teaches women about the different aspects of cooking and how it relates to science, but also relates to just women's rights and that kind of thing, and building up her fan base and, you know, that kind of thing. So overall, I would say this is a pretty fun mix of science, entertainment, and kind of humor. It does have quite a bit of humor, but also has some heavier topics as well. Overall, I would say this book has 4 pretty major themes to it. The first one being gender equality, the second being self-empowerment, the third being like the importance of education and knowledge in general, and then also grief and depression. All 4 of those play a pretty heavy element throughout this book. When it comes to the gender equality, you really see Elizabeth Zott trying to challenge societal norms and break through the challenges that she has faced. And to an extent, I think this is done pretty well, but I do have some issues within this. And when it comes to self-empowerment, it really shows her standing up for herself and also encouraging others to do the same, and kind of living by example for that. And I really did love this part. I think this was done really strongly. And when it comes to that empowerment, knowledge really ties into that, because she uses knowledge as a tool for empowerment. She wants women to understand the power that they have, and reach out for the knowledge that will give them that power. Now, there is some huge life events that I won't touch too far into, because I don't want this to be too spoilery, but there is a definite encompassing a theme of grief and depression, and how she tackles that depression and what gets her through it. And that part of the story I did also really like. I think it had a great depth of character and some character growth within that. So now that you know some of the basis behind this, this is some of my critiques. I did not like how stereotypical a lot of the characters were, specifically the male characters. It felt like there wasn't a lot of depth to any of the characters outside of Elizabeth, and that made the whole book feel a little flat. I do think this is a debut by the author, so some of that, you know, just comes with time with writing. And so it definitely, I just wanted there to be more to grab onto, more than just the characters being evil for the sake of being evil. Yes, that exists within the world, but not as often as it does within this book. It definitely felt like there could have been more depth and not so stereotypical behaviors throughout the whole book. And another minor critique of mine is that Elizabeth Zott seems to have no flaws, which kind of, I think, makes the flaws of all the outside characters seem even more, because you have this completely flawless character here and then everyone else is doing wrong. And so that kind of juxtaposition really didn't work for me throughout a lot of this book. And I think some of that just needed more character depth. Give her a little bit of flaws, but also give the other characters a little bit more reasons for why they were being the way that they were, and not just on paper, this is what they're doing. And I think that little bit of that shift would have made this book so much better. The other issue I kind of had with this was the pacing. It kind of felt like you were rubber banding throughout the whole book, going back and forth from this kind of humor side to very heavy topics. And it never felt like they melded the way that I would have liked to. One of the characters is her dog named 630, and for some reason the author decided to have the dog actually be like a character that you get inner thoughts of. And while I think some of it was interesting, it was very jarring when you go for that and then have this talking per se dog give you really heavy information. It was very jarring to have that kind of fantastical element when there's no other aspect of this book that is fantastical. It felt like there needed to be either more fantastical elements or just go ahead and take that back, you know? And you can still write a dog character without it having inner thoughts and telling you what it's thinking, and almost like a dog-like voice. That was just super jarring and not my favorite thing that this book could have done. And then my last critique is just that it felt like everything worked out too easy in some cases. There was a lot of conveniences and overly optimistic outcomes that for the time I don't think would have happened. The main character, for what she went through, was never challenged that much. Emotionally, yes, but from the outside world perspective, not really. Everything was pretty convenient for the character. And I felt like I did watch the show as well, just to see what they did differently. And I felt like the show did a little bit better in that aspect of there being consequences to her and that kind of thing, but also giving the other characters and side characters depth that the book was lacking. So I do think that the show was slightly better in this case, which I typically do not say. Now, one of my favorite things that did come from the book, like I said, is the empowerment of women. And one of the sayings that she has, and at the end of her show, she always says, "Now children, go set the table. Your mother needs a moment to herself." And I think that mindset could definitely be used more of even now, of understanding that you need to take time for yourself and being upfront about it and just being like, okay, this is me time, this is what I need, and that kind of thing. And I think that is done so well throughout this book. So I definitely did enjoy that. Overall, I wanted to love this book. It's so easy to read. That is one thing that I do think is a plus about it, is I flew through this book. I think it's like almost 400 pages. Yeah, it's right at 386. So almost 400 pages. And I read it in like 2 days. Like, I flew through it. And that's because the writing is super easy to read. It's super conversational and that kind of thing. And I wanted to love the story. I wanted to love the characters because I have a background as, you know, a woman in a STEM field. And so reading about that, I wanted to be super interested in what was going on. And so I wish that some of these elements that I critiqued would have been a little bit cleaner and cleaned up and elaborated on, and kind of talked about like some of the issues that women actually faced of that time. Like, because there's certain things that I'm like, if this happened for real in the 60s, I'm not sure that it would have happened the same way as this book did. I think there would have been a lot more hardships and challenges and that thing for Elizabeth to come across. And so I wanted some of that depth. Overall, I am going to give this a 3-star. Like I said, I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it. I thought it was a really good middle of the line book. So a 3-star for that is pretty good. I wish there was more to it. That being said, this is my crochet square. So you can see I'm actually really happy with how well the coral matches. So this is the first square done for my sweater. I am very excited about it. We only need like, I don't know, 50 more to go. So look forward to more book reviews so I can add to this. And I think I decided on the just standard granny square pattern for this, because for my book review sweater, I just want the colors to really come across to match up with the books and not necessarily start adding a bunch of different patterns or motifs and appliques and stuff on it. So it's going to be pretty straightforward just for the colors. I don't know what the next book I'm going to review is. I was thinking maybe Mistborn. So if you guys would like a Mistborn review, let me know and I will do that. So that is it for today. I hope you liked my review, and if it helps you any, please let me know. If you had some of the same thoughts or different thoughts, I'd love to discuss it down below. So like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Happy reading, stay cozy, stay crafty. Bye!